Call the time, Sam.
Did you download Crossfire, you lazy fuck?
I thought we were clapping. We're not clapping?
No, I demand to know when you've downloaded Crossfire.
So no clapping? Should I like put timers down and we can do this?
Yeah, let's do clapping. Yeah. So clapping on 20.
Okay. Cracking.
So why haven't you downloaded this pretty
basically,
average game that me and Joe? Listen, Joe Sellers, our dear friend Joe Sellers, is enthusiastic about playing a video game. We need to capture this moment. We need to pin this moment down, and you are squandering it.
It's the rarest of beasts. I will download it. The reason I didn't when you messaged me like, I don't know, 3 hours ago, I was cooking tea. I live in the 1850s, and therefore if I want heat in my house, I have to light a fire. I'm not making any of this up. This is all real. If I want heat in my house, I have to go and get coal. Yes, that's right. Like it's a Christmas Carol. I have to go and get coal and bits of wood and firelighters and matches. And I have to light an honest to goodness fire to heat the house. And because of that, as you can imagine, not massively efficient even with an electric pump to pump the heating system round. Not hugely warm upstairs. My Xbox is upstairs and I was like, it's quite cold. I'm quite cold. I think I'll just sit downstairs in the warm room. I didn't want to have to venture into the cold rest of the house. I will start downloading it this evening. Your Honour.
I'm looking at you, Dave. I'm staring into your eyes.
I can.
I mean, listen, for the fleeting 20 minutes that we will play it, this is definitely worth it. Actually, though, it's quite fun. Crossfire X, it's called. It has atrocious reviews.
Great, you're really selling me on this.
It's a free-to-play first-person Counter-Strike clone, basically.
Right.
And occasionally you come across people with Gatling guns. And how do you get the Gatling guns, you ask? You buy them. But
pay to win, my favorite words in video gaming.
But because we're so low level, it doesn't really matter. Anyone who's invested enough has surpassed the level that we're at and is playing in the big leagues. So we're quite happy to, just go under the radar.
I tell what we should play because they're still updating it. Rainbow Six Siege. If only Joe would play the multiplayer on that.
I don't think I have the mental ability left. I think I'm too old now. This is the thing, by the way. This is definitely a thing of when you get to a certain age. Not that we're old, but we're not in our 20s anymore. We're not even teenagers anymore. And there is some. I really, really struggle to play like those type of games, unless it's just super basic, like Crossfire, where it's basically just Counter-Strike. There's learning new controls, like Jesus Christ. How could hold LB, then Y, then X, and then up on the D-pad? Like, what on earth? I do not have the dexterity to do that anymore.
It's also the nature of how like different games of, like the sort of game that is popular and makes money now is very different than when we were, sort of teenagers playing video
back
games.
In 06.
While the the general sort of mechanics are very similar. Like there was no pay to win because in 2007 because they hadn't quite figured out how to take your money. Like that was literally the problem. Like we had online gaming sort of, and but they hadn't really invented microtransactions. So you couldn't just go into Battlefield, for instance, and buy like all the best guns.
Well, it wasn't until
that because they hadn't monetized it yet. So it made the game very, very different.
It wasn't until the Xbox 360 that we had like DLC downloadable pay for content. But what's your
even then
first...
a lot of it they used to call it was called add-ons. A lot of it was like DLC or expansion packs, and
or entire new games like
thrown around.
GTA, Lost and Damned.
Sometimes that would be PC gaming, especially that would be a different disc you went and bought at a shop.
What was your first memory of online gaming then?
That is an excellent question.
I'll tell what you think.
I'll tell you what it is. Me and a friend played through, I think it must have been Halo 2. Halo 3, sorry. When Halo 3 came out, you could play the campaign co-op online. Wow. So me and a friend of mine, this is as online as it gets, The two of us played the co-op campaign for Halo 3 with him sat at his house and me sat at my house, and it was like, oh my god, this is so cool. I
That
think it
is,
was Halo 3.
yeah. Well, Halo 3 would be quite late, to be fair, but I remember playing. I remember just about playing Quake on a Dreamcast over a dial-up connection.
You were going to have to explain so many of those words to your son if you ever had this conversation.
Quake
Dreamcast?
dial-up.
That's right, son. It's a bit like witch doctory in voodoo.
And that was, and I just have a vague memory of in my dad's living room, him swearing as it obviously wasn't working because it's dial-up, and playing Quake. But then fast forward to the first days of Xbox Live, we never had PCs because we we're millionaires, so we didn't have we had Xbox original, the OG, and playing Mech Assault, and we set up a username, and like actually playing online with real people. It was just unbelievable. And then not until the 360, we eventually got a 360. Which is when obviously, just it was like the early days. I
360
miss
was the big one. Like we were very poor. I used to eat gravel from the Midlet Road.
Middle Road,
But like we were always about maybe five,
uphill
10 years
both
behind
ways.
on anything. So like I had a PC in 2000 I built my own PC in 2007. It was like the highlight of my teenage years because I was that cool. Maybe that's
the
it, Sam.
exact
We
same
don't know
thing.
what's cool. We don't know what's cool now because we didn't know what was cool then. Anyway,
They've
so
changed what's cool.
before that, I had a PC, but it was kind of like built from spares from old models, so it was like 5 or 6 years out of date at the time.
Mhm.
I did get a 360 not that long after they came out, but I hadn't had an Xbox that long. We had a GameCube, but they're not a huge online presence on that console. We had a PS2 again briefly. As recently as I think 2002, we had a Sega Mega Drive. Like this should give you some idea of quite how behind the cutting edge of technology
Super
we
hang
were.
on.
I only even knew one person who had a Dreamcast, Sam, when they were about like. I just didn't have any rich friends either.
No, there was it was definitely like you did notice that, didn't you? Because like, we never had a PlayStation. The first PlayStation I owned was a PS3. So that's like I completely skipped PS2. I used to go to my friend's house to play GTA
Yeah.
because his parents were completely
I
clueless.
have I have a treasured memory about PS2s. My dad was contracting in Amsterdam when the PS2 came out, and he was working with two guys who were about 10 years younger than he was. So for some reason, he ended up in a queue like to buy one. You remember the craze for PS2s. You
Yes,
just couldn't get them. You couldn't get them, and they also came out in Europe about 6 weeks before they came out here. So my dad had queued up to buy this PS2, presumably like he never played it and to this day like denies any knowledge of it, bought a PS2 in this bemused fashion, brought it back to the UK for us, and then took us to Curry's to buy games for it, where he had, I'm not making any of this up, a stand-up row with the shop assistant because although the games and things were all out, the actual PS2 had been released but it wasn't in stock. So my dad wanted to buy games and this guy was basically like, you can't get the consoles. Why would you want the games? And my dad was like, I've got the console. I bought the console in Amsterdam, and for like 10 minutes back and forth, and this guy would not unlock the cabinet for my dad to buy like some really shit games for the PS2. It was a really bizarre time.
it's a funny. I think it's like that thing of when you're a kid and everyone says, "Oh yeah, I've got a PS9." Suck it. It's like I bet everyone thought you were talking absolute shit. Oh, you've got a PlayStation 2 with it? Yeah, what? Fuck off, David.
Also, I had broadband in 2001, which now in 2022,
Jesus.
you're like, I know. My dad worked in telecoms. It's the only reason we had broadband was because my dad worked in the industry. But like, no one believed me. No, you haven't got broadband. No one's got broadband yet. And it's like,
Broadband.
I know. And then I have to explain to my younger brother and sister what dial-up was. And like find a video on YouTube to show them the sound of like, well, sometimes you would try ringing a friend of yours on the house phone because that's what we did because mobile phones weren't really a thing.
Yeah,
You'd ring your friend on the house phone
but
and you'd get this horrible like.
we're not quite old enough for like actually phoning friends, because like I wouldn't really be phoning my friend. It would be awkward, like, hello, hi, do, do you do you want to come and stay the weekend?
Yeah,
I'll
but
ask
that's
my
literally how the
mum.
conversation would be. It would be like more often than actually, I would be phoning from my friend's house to my mother
Yes,
to tell her where I
I'm not
was
dead. I'm
after
not dead.
school.
But what I do have and awful memories of is any Windows XP fans out there, internet connection sharing, which was a feature in XP where you could route the internet from your PC, because I had a cable that went up through the floors from the router, because Wi-Fi was pretty shit, into my computer, and then I would send my I would send the internet from that to the Xbox. And so this maddening world of having to set up internet connection sharing on my
Well,
PC, and literally typing in IP addresses and DNS and subnet masks and all this shit, and it never worked, and it never worked, and it always
it
had
never worked, Sam.
problems.
The reason the Wi-Fi was shit, by the way, was because I'd be interested to know when the first Wi-Fi router BT started supplying people.
Mm.
You know, like because actually most of the routers we had up until like maybe the mid aughts, there weren't even Wi-Fi routers. If you wanted Wi-Fi, you had to get a separate thing to provide Wi-Fi. We sound like the
Mm.
oldest men in the world.
Well,
But I think it's like we talked about this before, but I think it's like just from the nature of our age means we've lived through like we remember having dial-up and nobody really having mobile phones all the way through to like smartphones came out in 2006,
yeah, around that.
6, 7, like the iPhone came out, like, and we experienced that. So it's kind of like cradle to sort of
Well, there's a
like,
great podcast, Dave, about uh, the first days of the iPhone, and that people, when Steve Jobs was announcing it, he scrolled his finger on the screen, and everyone went, "Oh, wow!" Like that. That's what I miss about technology now, is that it's all nascent. It's not as nascent as it was. We've reached a point where we're just like, there's no more innovation, really. That's why fucking Facebook is spending all of their money on trying to develop the metaverse, because where else are you going to go? Phones remain the same as they are,
yeah.
the same as they have been for a decade.
Well, like
But
you said, Sam, it's so
those
nascent.
days
It's
of
like
like, you had, it was just unbelievable. Every single announcement was amazing. I miss that.
I remember because I think came out in '06, like '06 or '07, around that era.
2007.
We went to uni in 2008. I didn't get a smartphone until like late 2009. When we went to uni, I had a little Sony Ericsson phone, and the
Yeah.
features on it were it had like a little trackball, tiny little trackball in it, and the camera cover slid. Like you manually slid the camera cover over, and it opened the camera. After that, I got a BlackBerry. My God, we're talking about like medieval technology here. I got a BlackBerry,
Ah,
which isn't really a smartphone, not in the same way that the iPhone is or was.
I
And then
loved
I got some Samsung Galaxy something.
I loved the idea of a black phone. A BlackBerry. I never had a BlackBerry, but
It was a proper knobhead phone because it came in like this little like leather pouch, uh, which nowadays is the sort of thing you see on like a cologne bottle, like an aftershave
yes,
bottle. But it came in like this little leather
I
pouch,
remember,
and
and
it's
I
that.
always remember being envious of that.
But it's when Sam they thought that mobile phones would continue to be. I've been watching a TV show called Charmed, which we won't dive into right now, but that was made in sort of like '98 or '99.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
This
like
is the phone I go on. Sorry, go on.
So in 98, 99, and then it goes through. So it goes through like all the people like belt clips for phones. Like the BlackBerry is a real like, offshoot of when like phones and smartphones and things were something that was being marketed at like like office executives and stuff.
Yeah,
Like, and it was meant that it was going to be business things, and they were like, well, people won't want a smartphone. They won't want a phone that can be a calendar and can send emails because people don't send emails. People who have jobs, office jobs send emails, but otherwise they don't. What are we looking at here, Sam?
we're looking at here. This is the HTC Hero. This is. I was thinking, oh no, I got a phone earlier than that, but this came out in June 2009, and I must have got it around then. Look at this,
I
Sam.
remember this. I remember this.
Look at the rollerball, right? And let's Can we get a profile shot? Look at
We
the
did have
chin.
yeah.
Look at the chin on this thing. Google HTC Hero listener, and it is. You know what? It was absolute trash. It was slow. It never worked. I was always envious because I was like, oh, I can't really afford to like go and buy an
iPhones were
iPhone.
expensive
They
for
really were.
phones back
So
then.
that's what I had instead, and I always regretted it because it wasn't very good, but it looked great.
I
And now
distinctly
look at
remember you
phones. They're just the
saying,
same. It's just the same,
yeah,
rectangle brick.
bit of glass, basically. I remember distinctly you used to go on all the time. Do you remember the iPod minis?
Oh,
And you used to
the
go on
nano,
all the
the
time.
nano.
The nano, sorry, the nano, because the mini was about fucking bigger than your phone now. Sorry, the nano.
Literally, like it was about to
Yeah,
go
yeah,
2 iPhones thick. Yeah.
yeah. 2 iPhones. The nano was this tiny little. I've got one in the drawer downstairs. I found it the other day. I remember going on about how you wanted a phone that was the size of the nano, and he said all you need to do is phone
Wow.
calls and text messages, and you were for like a year because we both had a nano, and you were just on and on and on and on and on about how that was like that was all you'd need, and that was all you'd have it forever, because they were really really small, they were light, they're about a third of the size of a phone now, and they were
Th-
thin, light.
Like almost
They
like
had for then high definition LCD screen and the trackpad on iPad on iPods, which like I think is
the
something that
click
kind
wheel.
of
The click wheel.
yeah, but that's a real kind of like bridge technology, isn't it? To
Mm.
smartphone technology, where that was amazing. That's kind of why I kept saying iPhones earlier. I meant iPods. That's why iPods kind of like took off the way they did, because that was just so intuitive. And now obviously it's fucking like dead technology that a kid would spit on. But back then that was like, yeah, this is cool. This is ergonomic and
I
it's
have,
well
I have
designed.
no idea where that is. I'm usually quite good at keeping technology, but I'd love to dig that out. I really would, because I love that little nano, the little tall one. There was a fat one as well, which I bought. I bought
Yeah,
for Nicola and got it engraved "I love you" or something on the back, and which I didn't like as much, but it had a widescreen display. And can you think about this? You're watching like, oh, I'm going to download per episode, £2 per episode. I'm going to download and watch an episode of TV on a
yeah.
widescreen display that is about 2 inches wide.
I
I
had
wouldn't.
thought I can probably find a charger for my Nano, and I know where it is. I would love to know what music is on there. I'd love to
Oh,
open it and be
probably
like, "Oh,
trash.
I'm such
Considering
a
your music
fucking
taste,
dickhead."
absolutely trash.
Yeah, and my music taste exactly. Music taste is a bit of a grandiose term for my taste in music. I've also got a shuffle.
I think you listen to music. I think you listen, and I mean that in the auditory sense, as in it goes into your ear, and then after that point, I don't think there's any. I think it's
Do you
like,
know what? We are veering all over the place here. I have got better, and
ugh.
I'll tell you exactly why I've got better. Driving, because usually listening to music would be something I would do previously when I had an iPod would be something I do when I was walking to and from somewhere and like my mind's
Yes,
elsewhere. Driving is the perfect blank mind state, isn't it? Where you can't really be thinking about much because you're having to pay attention to the road and do all of that. But that also isn't occupying a lot of your attention. So
yeah.
I now listen to music in the car, and I would say that in the last sort of 3 years of my taste in music, while it hasn't got any better, perhaps it's certainly like diversified a little bit.
I'll educate you.
Um,
I'll give you. I'll give you a
I'm
music
not interested
education
in being
here.
educated, Sam. I have
Yeah.
like 6 or 7 artists I listen to, and if Spotify thinks that
Okay,
something's
give us your
related to
top
that, I'll
seven
maybe
then.
listen
Come
to
on,
that.
give us your top
My top
seven. Oh,
seven
God, here we go.
of artists I listen to:
Jesus.
Feeder,
Ugh.
Radiohead,
Oh,
Elbow. What?
this is a good start. Actually, I'm surprised.
Stereophonics, although I haven't listened to any in
You're just naming it. You're
forever.
just naming some of my, like. Granted, when I was about 26, I listened to this
These
music.
are yes, exactly. I haven't listened to any blues in ages, but I quite like sort of 20s and 30s scratchy blues. And sometimes I listen to really like marquee shit, plastic, like rock, so Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin or Thin Lizzy.
Oh no, that's
Um,
acceptable.
Occasionally
Wow.
AC/DC. I used to love AC/DC. They used to be my
Yeah.
favorite band, and then obviously like I grew up and I was like, actually they're
I
not
mean,
good. Not, they're
it
not
is a
good.
wonderful spectrum of white guy music. Like it's really
I am a white guy.
good.
I've also been listening to the Cranberries a lot, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. I don't know enough about music to know if that's like a
if you're
I should think
cool.
I should be embarrassed about.
And you know what's funny? You say all this. I spend most of my time listening to classical music these days.
Sam, you have become your grandfather. You drive his
Because
car around. You
I,
drive his car around, and you listen to his CDs.
I do drive his car, but because I'm often working, and so I can't have any lyrics. So I need,
Yeah.
and also classical music is fucking awesome. Like you can just let it wash over you, or you can really get into it. And also that includes film scores, which I'm quite into as well. So yeah, I'm dead cool.
I
Hey,
know
fuck
it's.
it, I don't care.
I've got some friends, or some friends I used to keep in touch with better, from Leeds, who were really into music and going to gigs and stuff. And like, obviously, as we discussed, that's really never been my
Oh,
thing.
you know what? I'll let you come back to it. I fucking hate live music. I don't enjoy going because I went to see Elbow and Stereophonics, and it was great, and I enjoyed it. But also, I want the best version of them performing this. Not,
You want them to go over it and fix all the shit in it, yeah.
I'm sorry, Guy Garvey, are you drinking a beer? That's not going to improve your singing. Your throat's going to be all raspy and horrible. No.
Also, Sam, I bet you hate as well. Live albums. It's kind of like the worst of both. It's like,
Yes.
hey, you know that song you really like? Do you want to listen to the recorded live version of it, which is fucking like 40% shitter than the version you already know?
Full of shrieking fucking fans.
Yeah,
The only good live album actually in existence, and this is a fact, is Foo Fighters' Skin and Bones, because what they did is have acoustic
yeah.
reimagining of some of their more rocky songs. But yes, you're 100% right.
Anyway, getting back to my point. So, but I think that my general sort of apathy towards music, and that generally is what it is. It's not like I hate music or dislike music or cannot appreciate music. It's my general kind of like I'm not massively into it. And whenever you come across someone who is massively into it in that aggressive kind of like you must like the things I like sort of way, which we're all guilty of in some respect.
Is that me?
Um,
Oh.
just everyone. But in this situation, no. And I had this friend had said to me like. And I hate when people do this because it's just like a sign that you don't really listen to anything anyone says. Where like they said to me, "Oh, I was listening to this band the other day, and they basically do like it's like musical history. So they're like talking and yeah, you're doing the face." And he was like, "Oh yeah, I think it's a really good way for you to get into music." And I'm like, "I'm about to throw myself out of this moving train. Are you fucking joking? Like I
Yeah.
enjoy I
I'll train
enjoy
now.
reading a dusty, dry, boring history book written in the 60s by an academic. I don't need to like use, but I don't enjoy it to the extent where I would enjoy it in all like, in all media, the William Shatner spoken word version of fucking
I'm a
Tyndall and
rocket
Shee's History of
man.
America, you know, like the Americans decimated the West, like actually saying that maybe I could get into that, but you know what I mean? Like it's not necessarily like all encompassing. Like I am a multifaceted individual with lots of interests and they don't overlap. Like I don't want to listen to like the fucking history album, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I know.
Um,
I completely with you. I'm completely with
but
you.
again, I think that's that core misunderstanding of why it is I don't, I'm not like a huge music person. And it's again, not because like I'm not interested in what people are singing about, because usually it's the most trite, like fucking
See, so
most artists sing about things that everybody's feeling because guess what? That's how you sell albums.
I'm the only person who's been in love ever. It's like
I'm so
actually,
sad, sad. I'm the only person
but
who's ever been sad.
but this is when I was in my in my 20s. Completely, yeah. That was and teenagers as well, like Radiohead. And there's a great bit, but I can't remember the guy's name. Is a black comedian who's like, "What is it with white guys and Radiohead? It's like their kryptonite." It's completely true. I'm a
Yeah,
creep. Yes, I'm a creep too. Like there's no, not like that, not like that. In a
yeah,
good
no,
way.
no, no, yeah. In a good way, in a good way.
There's a thing about I think maybe. Whereas now, I just most 99% of lyrics, I'm like, what?
Like you listen to
Because
it,
what are we
obviously, for
singing
like,
about?
yeah, Mostly these days, it's kind of like if I'm listening to something and I'm enjoying it, it's regardless of what the lyrics are. It's usually when they'll throw in some kind of like weird mix or like sound, and there's sometimes there's a sound that like just you can't listen to,
Yeah.
and sometimes music comes on and you're like, ugh, get off.
Which brings me back to classical music. Now, I have in the past shared in the WhatsApp some
Welcome
fantastic.
to Radio 4, Radio 2, which
No,
radio?
Radio 3. Radio 3.
Radio 3. I don't fucking know.
Hi, and welcome to Radio 3. Today we're going to be exploring some of the lesser known classics and diving into the music from Holst, the planets. Now, I would suggest to you,
Welcome to Holstcast.
Holst, honestly suggest you sit down and listen to. It's 45 minutes long. Listen to Holst's Planets because it is fucking magnificent. It's magnificent, Dave. And also it's quite funny bringing it back to movies.
Large swathes of this.
Bringing it back to, I don't know. I want you to listen to the whole thing. Bringing it back to the movies is that there's a great story about how the Gladiator composer who Hans Zimmer, I think, possibly, maybe, basically stole.
I think that's Zimmer.
Yeah, and also when
everything
you listen,
yes,
yeah, and also listen to Star Wars, and it's basically just Holst. So there's something about that era of music. So I would suggest listen to that, and like Beethoven's good as well. Beethoven's Ninth is really, really cool. Very interesting.
The general idea would be the classics for a reason,
Yeah.
If they weren't good, we wouldn't.
And it's all know about it's them. It's all just recycled, as we've always talked about, as we're talking about right now. There is nothing original in the world.
There's absolutely not. But like, there's a reason why largely you don't walk into places and they're playing Britney Spears, or the Spice Girls. Like, and I'm not saying that that's bad. What I'm saying is that the classics are the classics for a reason,
Yeah, not many bars playing Holst either, to be fair. But there we go.
Oh, I said places, Sam, like shops. All sorts of dross.
We covered a lot of ground there. We've covered a lot of ground in this 27 minutes. I think this is going to definitely be recycled content when we can't be asked to record. so if you're listening to this, listener, you're getting the good stuff. You're getting the stuff that we literally just throw together.
Yeah. Just a slight technical question, Sam. If I just do my patented cough, does that save us clapping again?
I know. I'll just clap because there we go. I can see it on the.
It's about you. Yeah, I got you.
It's about me.
Right. We're ready?
Hold on. Oh no, I actually haven't got a funny bit.
Well, we're about 10 seconds from me just going, and then you'll have to kind of like improv a funny bit.
I'm much more of a writer than an improv artist.
I'm going to put you through your paces. You're also going to have to make up the shortfall for the fact that Ross isn't here. So this is
Can we not mention that on the episode because it's getting boring?
No, I'm not interested. No, it's fine. I've done it enough recently. I feel like I had it all out last week when I did my trawl of previous excuses. So that's fine. We'll just do the podcast.
Okay.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Imaginary Movie Podcast, a podcast where we watch a movie and then we talk about it. My name's David, and a part of me really, really wishes I understood baseball better because of it's this monolithic cultural thing in America, which bleeds through in all the TV we enjoy. However, if you've ever tried to sit through even 10 minutes of actually watching a live baseball game, that very quickly disabuses you of any notions of getting into this proud, over a century-old sport, which children play at school over here for a laugh in the summer.
Yeah.
We call it rounders.
Rounders. Do you remember playing rounders?
Yes, but we'll do this. Do your intro, and then we'll do the rounders bit.
Well, I don't have an intro. I'm trying to delay while I find one. My name's Sam, and what is this movie about? Ball or what?
Right. So very quickly, we did this week. We did 2011's Moneyball, which we will circle back to after we talk about Rounders, because it's
Yes.
much more interesting than
Welcome to
baseball.
Rounders Cast. Fuck
Rounders
you,
cast, the
listener.
British cast,
Listen to
Rounders
this.
cast.
Tell me about your Rounders experiences,
I
Dave.
played Rounders legitimately 5 years ago. Um,
Jesus.
when I was working in an office, we had so we had a Christmas party every year, which was like a big office wide thing, big block of offices. And then in the summer, they'd have like a departmental summer party, so everyone would get allocated a bit of money. And the last year I was there, we went to a rugby club on a Friday afternoon and played rounders and got shit faced and had a barbecue. There was like 50 of us, and we all played rounders, and it was hilarious, Sam, because when you're at school, I think that like your what's the word? Like your physical mass is less, and not because I'm fat, which I am, but like I think that children's like physical mass, and therefore their like momentum and force with which they hit each other is a lot less. But when you add in like 50 people in their 20s and 30s predominantly, who are fat and who have also been drinking, it becomes quite a terrifying, the injuries are just I slid into the first base. What do you call it in rounders? Is it a base?
I have no idea.
Let's call it first base for argument's sake. I slid into first base because I'd hit the ball rather poorly. Because again, I'm a man in my 30s who isn't a professional sports athlete. That's the phrase I mean as well, sports athlete. Slid into first base, and I just kept sliding. Like again, because I'm 30 and I'm fat, just kept sliding. Hit my boss directly between her legs. My face smacked her directly in the midsection. She somersaulted in the air, landed behind me, and then was out of the game for injury. It
Wow.
was hilarious, horribly embarrassing for everyone involved, but then hilarious again. It was a funny sort of thing.
That's a great bong indeed. That's a great it's a great rounder story. I don't really have a rounder story to call that, but I do remember playing rounders as a kid. It's funny because it's based. I think rounders came first. Like I think we invented it as we did. Fuck you, America. For
It's
most
kind of like
things,
all bat and ball sports are kind of related. Like if you look
rich
into
people in the
history,
Tudor times. That's my guess.
if you look into the history of any sport, it's basically like balls. We can play sports with balls. Not
Pigs
just
bladders, fantastic.
Yep, and bats. We've got bats for like I don't know, beating foxes to death or servants or whatever we had bats for. Like we've got bats.
Civil
That's fine.
wars and
Civil wars.
and invading the Middle East. Yeah.
Exactly. We've got
No, no,
bats.
no. The first time we did it in the Crusades.
Yeah, we figured out bats. We have the bat technology, and it's this marrying up of two. And I guess like kids playing, it's like right. Well, we're adults. We need to impose rules on these children playing, right? So it's very important that we codify
Well,
these rules
that's what
and set
sport.
them down.
That's what sport is,
And
isn't
that's
it?
what sport
Sport.
is. That sport is literally
I
adults
mean,
being like, no, you must have rules. No
it,
fun
it
without rules.
it's also like watching previous episode of Gladiator. You, that was sport. That was entertainment, and people died, and it was great. And now we're like, well, Devontae Adams is
You're
really
saying,
good. I don't think we should. I don't think we should kill him. Should we kill
but if
Tom
you said,
Brady?
but if he was gored by a rhino, suddenly I'm like, say, I might be tuning into that Thursday night football game.
100%. But if Cristiano Ronaldo or Tom Brady or no Andre Agassi, no, he's retired, a tennis player, was killed.
Who's the Scottish guy? Not Tim Henman. That's even fucking nearly as
Andy Murray,
outdated
he's
as
pretty
Andre
much done as
Agassi.
well. Anyway, if a major sports person was killed per game, we would soon run out of major sports people. So I just think
It wouldn't be a very attractive career,
it
would it?
wouldn't. So sport is basically the gladiatorial, ring, which is basically battle. So we want to see people crunching and and this is where, to bring us back to this movie. This is where baseball is kind of an outlier in that. Like it's a bunch of guys who look a bit like me, hitting a ball pretty well, and can do that successfully. But this is a baffling sport. It's a baffling sport. And what I'm very impressed by this movie is that, basically You don't need to know anything about baseball. The movie is really quite happy for you not to know that much about baseball, as long as you know that you basically hit balls with bats
I think
and run
it's the
around.
massive strength of the movie.
It
Do you
doesn't
want to give us a
matter.
plot summary, Sam, before we ramble any further? And then we can maybe jump into why this what I would broadly term a Sam economics movie, like is engaging and fun to watch, and well, not fun maybe, but like interesting and engaging and a good movie.
Sam Economics. How dare you? Oakland
I
A's
mean that
general
in
manager.
the best way
I know you
possible.
do. I know you do. Oakland A's general manager Billy Beane's successful attempt to assemble a baseball team on a lean budget by employing computer-generated analysis to acquire new players is what happens in this movie, which is a bit that IMDb is missing from that sentence. So this is a Sam Economics movie. Now, to be fair, the reason that I picked this is because it's got quite a good cover art on Netflix, and for no other reason than that, really. It's not until I actually looked into it and said, "This is by the same writer of the book who did The Big Short," previous episode,
Yeah,
and it is
it
very
has a lot
much
in common with that movie.
yes, it is very
Um,
much. It isn't an Adam McKay movie,
no,
um, who did The Big Short and the other previous
Wolf of
episode.
Wall Street. No, he didn't do Wolf of Wall Street. That was Scorsese.
No,
Don't Look Up.
Don't Look Up, and the other guys who's done 3 Adam McKay movies. So it isn't one of his movies, so why are we talking about him? But actually, what it does, you do get that real, um, like dive into a world that you know nothing about. Like I don't know
Yeah,
anything about short uh, trading stocks, and The Big Short is a fantastic, fantastic exploration of all this fascinating world that exists and destroyed the world economy. This is less destroying the world economy, but we get a fascinating insight into how baseball works and how
it's
these guys managed to achieve something quite amazing, doing something that had never been done before using this analytical model.
yes, and it's the stakes could not be lower. Like,
Sport, nobody
um,
cares.
I think it no, but I think it's a testament to the movie because we don't see a lot of the baseball. Like we said, you don't need to understand anything about baseball really in this because it gives you everything you need. Because again, the movie's more concerned with the inherent. The book I think is called Moneyball: How to Win at the World's Most Unfair, How to Beat an Unfair Game, basically. And the idea being, and we can maybe touch on Premiership football as well because I know
Mm,
sod all about that. Let's
let's
talk
talk
about the
about
NFL for a
sports.
second.
Sportscast.
So, in Major League Baseball, it's a bit like Premiership football, as I'm given to understand it, in that there is no salary cap. We watch the NFL, National Football League, and
Right.
in that, there's a salary cap, which means every team, regardless of how much money the owners have or the club has, and they make in ticket sales, whatever,
Hmm.
they can only spend, I think it's like $210 million a year on players. That's all they can pay their players a year. And
Right.
every team has that cap. Every team
Wonderfully,
can afford that cap.
yeah, socialized, top-down economics for a country
Exactly.
that's weirdly free market obsessed. Go on.
I know, but it's because all the teams are like, it's all a central sort of league. Baseball's a bit older and the leagues are a lot older and all the club ownership in America is a wildly disparate country in terms of, economics and wealth disparity and all of that. But it's also like areas like New York's got loads of money, but not every, there's more people and stuff. California's got shitloads of money, but not Oakland, and so anyway, so there's no salary cap. So this movie sets out really well. The start of the movie is kind of like the all is lost moment is the start of the movie, which is that Brad Pitt, the best looking man in baseball, has gone to the playoffs. Maybe he's gone to some sort of baseball playoff scenario, and they've lost. And basically, he's saying like we can't afford.
Against the
They get
Yankees, which I
yeah.
know are good. The Yankees
There's
are
the
good.
Yankees and the Red Sox and the White Sox. Is there also the White Sox?
Maybe.
Are they a different sports franchise? Anyway, and his big problem is he's the general manager of this the Oakland the Oakland A's, and he wants more money from the guy who owns the team to pay for players because he says like the New York Yankees spent $125 million last year on players. This is in 2002, by the way. We spent 35 million. Like, there's a reason we can't compete with these guys. Like, and that's kind of the inherent sort of thing in the book and in the movie, is that baseball isn't fair. Like, it isn't fair that these people are competing in theory in the major league in the same bracket
And
of teams, and it's literally comes down to the fact that their owner doesn't have billions and billions of dollars to set fire to every year.
yeah, and this is where I'm like, that's like 120 million. Bless, that's a shit. Because when you compare it to Premier League football, where 120 million is about two players. I'm not joking. That's about
Tell us
two
about Premier
players.
League football and how that works, Sam, in terms
Well,
of
well,
the
well. It's
salaries.
exactly as stratified as the baseball, and there is no like fairness in terms of a salary cap. I mean, there is like, for there's something called financial fair play, which is basically there to try and, but clubs just ignore it and are happy to just say, well, oh well, basically the rich clubs remain rich. I mean, there is an example recently, Leicester City in 2016. I remember because it was the year that my son was born. I have a distinct memory of him sleeping next to me while listening to the radio of Leicester winning the league. But they managed to kind of break the top six and win the league in unaccountable and probably never happen again. Demonstration of just plucky, let's go for it. But really, it's the top clubs. It's the top clubs that win because they have all the money. They can buy the best players. They can.
Well, the players want to be earning. The dump truck of money is driven up to the house, and what
Yep.
are they going to do? Say no?
Well, Erland Haaland, Erling,
Is that the Norwegian guy?
Norwegian guy, plays for Man City, and he is earning £900,000 a week. Now, £900,000 is like, well, that's it's like 10 years. It's a long time for me to earn £900,000. Like, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous money. So we're looking at the scale is just off the charts. Now we come to baseball again. Don't know anything about baseball, but clearly there's less money in it. There's less money than even the NFL, where we've got people like Patrick Mahomes earning for £500 million over.
Well, it's worth remembering that in this movie is set in 2002. It's worth remembering that, because I think that, like, they're talking about the A's, the Oakland A's, are losing their best three players, and the best guy is going to the Yankees, and he signed a 5 or 6 year, $125 million contract. So, like, it's still really good money, and I think it varies so much in baseball. But, like, yeah, it's just silly money.
Yeah, but that's sports, isn't it? That's sports, and because what it takes is for people to be able to perform on the field, and this is why, like, as much as it's ridiculous that someone like Haaland is earning, half almost $1 million. I think it's about 860 actually, just looking, but still 900 grand a week, is because he has scored so many goals already. He has managed to achieve something that is quite remarkable, and he's the one who's doing it. So in some ways, when you say, well, that's ridiculous, yes, it is ridiculous, but also the club is earning tens of millions of pounds per week. It's able to afford this because we all pay attention to it, and that's the thing that baseball seems to be quite unique, is that it does have it has a really enthusiastic fan base, and you kind of need to know a lot. It's a bit like cricket, whereas where you need to really understand what's going on with cricket, and the games last 3.5 hours, and if you don't know what's going on, then it's exactly like a reference at the start, which is Burns ball, multi-ball. Like, it's like Fry watching Burns ball.
Baseball's even worse than cricket, Sam, because, like cricket, there's no, like, the NFL, and then an NFL game is 60 minutes played over usually about 3 hours, but, like, there's a time. When the time expires, the game ends.
Yeah.
In baseball, I think the longest game has lasted days, like literally days. They had to, like, stop because it got this was, decades and decades ago, but they played 9 innings, and an innings is like, you've got 2 teams, one bats, one fields, just like in school, like rounders, and an innings is one team batting. So you've got 9 of those, right?
Yeah.
And like as soon as all the batters are out, you go on to the next innings. So like that's one thing. Like watching a game of football, like 90 minutes in the UK, great. Rugby, 80 minutes, cracking. Like you're going to be in and out relatively. You know, that's going to be me. I'm going to be finished at 4 o'clock. Baseball seems like number one, you've got to commit to, right, I'm going to be here for the next fucking 4 to 8 hours, basically. Number two, they play, each team plays 100 and, what did I say the other day? It's like 100 and something games. They play about 5 or 6 times a week. Every team plays 5 or 6 times a week for the entire season.
162 games in a regular season, which means that presumably there's games in a.
So again, that is just a phenomenal amount of sport. I think to be like a proper baseball fan, I just think the investment of like number one, there's always baseball on, so that must be really nice as like a fan. Like every single day there are multiple baseball matches on.
God Lord. So
But
can
at
I
the
just
same
let?
time,
Can
go
I
on.
just? Can I just? Well, so it's 162 games for each 30 of the 30 teams in the American League and National League, played over approximately 6 months, a total of 2,430 games, excluding the postseason. I
Yep.
mean, what
For
the
reference,
fuck?
in the NFL currently, and the games, there's an extra 32 games this year. There are something like 520 games in the entire season.
And in
Played
the
over
Premier
about the same.
in,
Played over about the same. No, less time, but still.
and in the Premier League, you're looking at 38 games each. It's a bit
Yep.
higher in the lower leagues, up to 48, but you're looking at around 40 games per club, which, do the maths times 20, whatever it is. Like it's it's one of those things. Watching this movie, and let's maybe get into the plot of this. But watching this movie, I'm like, I'd really love to get into baseball because we have quite recently. This is just us talking about sportscast now, but we have raised quite, in the relatively recent years, we've got into the
3 or 4
NFL
years.
because of my fantastic, pioneering spirit to bring you on board. You're welcome, Dave. We've got into
You
the
just gotta
NFL.
love my tastes, apparently.
I
I'm
am the
gonna really
social
look
glue.
forward to my next thing.
I am the Holst. Yeah, there you go. So we've got into the NFL and we've had to learn how the sport works, but also we're like getting into the culture and the memes and all. Like there's a whole world within each sport, and I really really enjoy that. I really enjoy that aspect of it. Whereas it just seems like baseball just is. How could I pause? I mean, what time the game's on?
Do you
Like
remember when we tried to watch basketball? I imagine it'd be a bit like that. And like
yes,
the games are all on at like 4 in the morning, and there are
yes.
15,000 of them a year, and it all moves. Well, I imagine baseball will be inverse of basketball. Basketball moves so fast it's hard to know what's going on, but
Hmm.
baseball moves so slowly that you've gone into a comatose state by the second innings.
I don't know. Maybe it's maybe it's something for us to uh, possibly get into
Possibly.
one day.
But let's move on from baseball just for a second, because ultimately I think this isn't a movie that we've watched sports movies that are kind of like a send up to the sport, like a love letter to, and there are movies about baseball which are a love letter to baseball. But this isn't that. This is a movie that's kind of like, oh, baseball's all right, but you know what's really interesting? Statistics, spreadsheets. Like, and that's what the movie is more concerned with, which I love. And again, it kind of makes it so that two idiots like you and I, you don't know the second thing about baseball, uh, other than things that are mentioned in Seinfeld. Like, we can enjoy it and understand what's going on because it's very simple. It's like, you need to know enough about a sports franchise to know a little bit about how it works. And you need to know that money exists. And those are the two things you need to know to go into this movie and digest it and understand it, because it isn't a movie that loves baseball. This is a movie that's kind of like yeah, baseball. It's fine though. It's fine. It's fine. I know baseball's boring, but we've got something interesting to tell you about that's going on behind the scenes of baseball, because we never see much baseball in this, which I think is fantastic.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, no, totally. And actually, this movie is really about the statistical model that's interesting. Is it James? Turner. What's the name of the guy?
Bill
Um,
something.
Baseball statistics guy, and it's about his kind of like attempt at moving. Bill James' name is actually, sorry, at moving like baseball from this like gut feeling thing. And a lot of the guys we see in this, these old guys, and you've got a good line about this, but these old guys who are just, it's all about the gut feeling, Billy, like, get your spit shine out, and
It's
it's
based
like,
on like and then we see this all the time in things generally. We grandstand a bit here, but and the movie the book, I haven't read the book, but from what I understand, the book is much more like on this side of the coin. Well, the movie touched on it as well. It's basically like that before this, the way that, because again, baseball leagues have existed. I'm pretty sure like the MLB, the Major League Baseball thing, has
it's
existed for like over 100
it's
years.
part of America's psyche, isn't it? And
Yeah.
that's what I'm interested
But
in as well.
and you know how like sometimes something's done a certain way because that's how it's done.
Yeah,
And that can continue for decades and decades after it doesn't have to. Like there's a real like 1920s vibe. They talk about it in the movie. They talk about the record that the Oakland A's break in the 20 consecutive wins. They're breaking a record that was set in like the 1921, and they're saying, well, what many people consider to be the best baseball team ever assembled. And you think like in most other sports, what we're looking at with the advancement of medical technology and like officiating technology, like we are kind of looking at right now where um people have never been so athletic and capable. And so in most sports like the NFL
yeah.
and Premiership football, in most sports like and basketball as well, like it is improved and improved and improved and improved. Whereas with baseball, there's this real look back at like, you know, it's kind of stayed a bit more stagnant. So the film
Hmm.
talks about that. The film talks about how the way that they scout for players is the way that they scout for players in the 20, which is that scouts go to college games, they go to high school games, they go to minor league games, and they watch players play. And they meet players, they talk to players, they write everything down on a bit of paper. They go to a grubby office like the Oakland A's office here. Bit of trivia for you, Sam. Most of the people in this shot, apart from Brad Pitt, are actual former players and scouts. A lot of them, the vast majority of them,
When you can tell when someone's on screen who's not an actor because
because they're not acting.
they seem real. But also,
Yeah,
this is the line I'm trying to get you to say. God, these people are ugly. Like compared to Brad Pitt. This is a
yeah.
movie full of
Um,
just because they look real, because they're not Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt's so
well, they're
fucking
haggard.
beautiful.
They're old. They haven't looked after themselves. They've been smoking 40 cigarettes a day since 1921 when the Giants
Which
set the record or whatever
which
it was.
exactly, which is a contractual requirement of them being a baseball coach.
Yeah.
Like
So
it's
we have this kind of thing throughout this movie. We'll circle back to Brad Pitt being like much like they did nothing to make him look unappealing in this movie. I suppose it's Brad Pitt. It's difficult, but anyway. And so there's this feeling in baseball in 2002 in that era that like we're still going to grade players the same way, even though we've got like everything's recorded, so we can sit and watch tape. We're not going to do that, even though we've got statistical databases that you can fucking carry around in your pocket by 2002. We're not going to use that. And it's
yeah.
because you've got these old timers, and I think having the scouting staff be actual baseball scouts, and they're all old, and they're all like I think that's one of the better scenes in the movie, actually, is like the initial scouting meetings. And apparently, when the guy says, I love this, I was reading the trivia. And it's like little things like they're like when they go about this guy and they're like, nah, his girlfriend's ugly. Like, obviously, he's got no
He's got
confidence.
no confidence.
Uh, and it's like, but there's this real belief that
Is
like
that
in
a
sports
business? Is that a
people,
business decision?
but that would make a difference. That sports people like they talk about the guy who throws funny and like, oh well, he throws funny, so we don't like that. He's a bit different.
Yeah.
And again, it's kind of like if you grew up in the system and these people
And
were all born in like the 50s, like, and they'd spent their lives watching baseball, playing baseball, coaching baseball, scouting for baseball, like you learn over 40 years of your career, you learn the things to watch out for.
yeah.
And like something like he's got an ugly girlfriend, so he lacks confidence.
And there's
Apparently, the actual root of that was he's got an ugly girlfriend. Obviously, his vision is not very good, was the actual thing. But they thought that was a little bit too harsh. Like only a blind man would go out with an ugly woman. Speaking of, I just want to get it out now. This is a very male film.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. I mean,
that doesn't treat
is
women
there
particularly well.
a woman in this?
Yes, there were two. There's Brad Pitt's
Oh,
ex-wife and Brad Pitt's daughter. And
well,
they might have character names, Sam.
there's actually
Go on.
more. There is also the wife the wife of
Chris
Chris
Pratt.
Pratt, and also the secretary of Brad Pitt.
Oh, you mean the Asian woman that we see in the background of shots being talked at, but we never ever, yeah, yeah. This
I
movie,
think
and it's
this
not
fails
particularly
the
like
Bechdel
it's.
test. I
Well,
think.
this is kind of like I think this is a sports movie, so it's kind of like a. I'd love for them to have a subtle nod about how there are no women in any of this, but there isn't. This movie posits that women basically don't exist. Like it's not even that women are bad or women aren't interested. It's women don't exist. It's all just like sweaty old men in a basement below a baseball
and
stadium.
and and
Stadium.
that's kind of sports, isn't it? That's kind of
Yeah,
sports. Like
kind of.
that's kind of just. It's kind of just. I mean, we're we're as we subscribe to that exactly with the NFL.
Speaking as a man,
Speaking as a man, we're terrible. Don't listen to us. But it's yeah. This is and I think it's really important for us to be mentioning that this is a really really male movie. Now, there are probably better takes. Maybe there's some. Maybe the Bechdel cast has done Moneyball for one of their episodes. I
I
don't know, but
don't think they have.
I'm
It's a hard
sure
movie to look at through a feminist lens, Sam. Again, because women
when there's
don't
no
exist. It's not even
there's no
like a shit like
femininity
rom-com
at
that
all.
turns women into porcelain dolls or anything like that. It's not even like as bad as Love Actually or You've Got Mail or anything like that. There's
Bridget
not even any
Jones.
misogyny to talk about because there just are literally no women in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, so go and find a better podcast that's going to dive into this. But I think it's really
Exactly.
important to know, and
Important to mention, I think.
and so many movies are like this, aren't they? They're just completely lacking any, other than wives and secretaries. I mean, God Almighty!
It's a
Oh,
movie made by men,
Jesus,
starring men, about a book written by a man about other men.
4 men,
For men.
and I enjoyed it, and that's probably a
Yeah, but let's
reflection
get
on me.
past that because again, I think like it's worth
Yes.
mentioning, but there's nothing to talk about there.
So we don't need to know anything about baseball. We don't need to know anything about women, as we've just discussed. We also kind of don't really need to know anything about statistics. And we've got Jonah Hill in this, who's got an economics degree from Yale, and he is a disciple of Bill James. And so when I'm watching this movie, what I found really interesting is like the way that is the fact that this guy could come up with an idea. Bill James could come up with an idea that is, we can basically like work around the fact that teams don't have any money. We can almost like reverse engineer baseball because like a bit like American football, and let's not get into the sports as much as we just have, but it's all about statistics. In football, you don't really have in soccer, that is, you don't really have that
Well,
same level, that same deep dive. And so when you look at baseball is probably the most statistic heavy sport. It's where fantasy sports came from. It came from baseball. That's where it was invented. And I love just that concept. I almost wish that this movie went a little bit further because it's kind of a soap opera. It's kind of about the relationships between these characters and Billy Bean trying to like atone for his past somehow because of all of that.
apparently, the movie picks it up, never lets it go, but also doesn't really do a lot with it.
Yes,
We can
totally.
touch on
I
that in a
agree.
minute. I do just want to mention that, like, I think the reason that the baseball's the perfect sport for this Moneyball theory to have existed, and why it wouldn't necessarily, this same thing wouldn't necessarily work in something like the NFL to the same extent, is because in baseball there's exactly one way to score points. And as Brad Pitt says, and as Jonah Hill says, there's exactly one way to score points, and it's to get on base. So they talk about the main statistic that they want that's important, and they've got all these stars and they hit home runs all the time, and but they've looked at the statistics and said actually home runs don't fucking matter as shit. Being a great baseman, getting outs does not matter at all. What matters is getting on base. If you get on first base, everyone moves round one, like we score points. That is, you're not out because you're getting on base. So they look at statistics, and that's why they hire Chris Pratt and Justice Hill, who's played by an actor whose name I haven't got in front of me, and the third guy who's in about 3 scenes. And they get them because they excel at this one statistic, which is
Yeah.
to get on base.
Stephen
And that's
Bishop
kind of like
plays
Stephen
David
Bishop.
Justice. Yeah. Yeah, totally. And that's a fascinating like reducing a sport down to this is the one way. And now when you think about it, baseball's been played for 150 whatever 100 years or whatever in America, 150 years.
They've literally had leagues for like 140 years, I think,
Yeah.
something daft like that.
Which is cute. It's like, oh, that's most of your history, isn't it, America? Bless. Whereas, but the fact that they hadn't really, not until the early 2000s, or maybe a little bit earlier when Bill James actually developed the idea, but not until the early 2000s where this was taken up. And you think in all that time, nobody's decided to go down that route. Whereas
this is
now
what I
we
talked
see,
about, Sam. It's like it's the people did the things the way they did them because that's the way you did them. And you've got like this decades of tradition dictating and saying, and they say about star power, because in most sports, you were talking about Haaland, the Norwegian guy earlier. Like most sports, like he could go to fucking like 90% of the teams that aren't in the same division in the Premiership, and they would instantly be the best team in that division. Like that's what teams dream of. They salivate over. They want a Patrick Mahomes. They want a Tom Brady. They want a football guy that you mentioned. You know, they want a Babe Ruth. They want someone who's really fucking timely references here. They want someone who's going to come in and just like win games by themselves. That's what they want. And I think the resistance to that is very much based on like, this is kind of all we know. And they didn't want some Johnny come lately coming in and saying, this is a spreadsheet, guys. This tells us that King, you know, the guy with the gammy eye is actually statistically better than fucking Dan Marino, you know? I know he's a football player, but I'm really out of baseball players.
Yeah, that's it. Babe Ruth, that's it, gone. Oh, no, we do know some. Simpsons episode of baseball, Darryl Strawberry.
Talking baseball.
We don't even know the words.
Yeah, we could do.
Yeah, you look up
Ken Griffey's grotesquely swollen jaw.
Who else? Anyway.
Steve Sachs running with the law. Darryl Strawberry. Darryl.
This is a really insightful episode.
Sorry. Getting back to what we were saying.
Well, no, I've got a point. Sorry, I've got a point to respond to what you said. So, it's also like it's about conventional wisdom, isn't it? And challenging the conventional wisdom, and that's where I think this film is really. That's where the interest for me is. Is that the whole movie is about these two guys saying, "We're not going to do things the way they've been done before. We're gonna push the envelope. We're gonna dive into a world and expose ourselves in a way that only sport can." And that's what I think I love about sports movies, is that they dramatize, and this movie has a kind of like acceptable level of historical accuracy, but also there's a little bit about in terms of some of the relationship, how he seems to get really shit on Philip Seymour Hoffman's character.
The trend of sports movies a little, in that it's not overly concerned with the sport. I know, like, obviously we do get the sports moment where Chris Pratt scores the home run, and they win their 20th game to sort of
I have
win.
No idea what happened there. Why did he win? Why did they win then? Any idea?
So they're in the ninth. They're in the bottom of the ninth, which I had to Google, which is a phrase
I know what that means.
heard
I've heard that before. I've no idea what it means.
Years. It is the last half of the last innings of a game of baseball. So the Oakland A's in the innings, the other team have batted first.
I'm
right?
nodding.
Each team bats and fields in an innings. So in the last innings, the other team came on and they scored like 10 runs in an innings, and they caught them up on the scoreboard.
They were 11
the
11
Oakland
ahead,
A's come on. It's the bottom of the ninth.
Which means what again?
It's the last part of the game.
Okay.
Right. And Chris Pratt scores a walk-off home run, which means that he comes up to the bat, he swings the bat, he hits the ball into the stands, but within the legal hitting space, uh, which means that he gets an automatic home run, which puts them 1 point above the other team. And because the other team don't have another chance to bat, they just win and the game finishes.
Right. Okay. Okay. Now it's funny because isn't that the opposite of what they hired him for? Because they hired him because he made first base lots.
Yes, Your Honor. And again, this is kind of like why there's a story here. Because if the story was the Oakland A's, and this is why it has to be here with them winning their 20th game in a row, a record which has been beaten since, by the way.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, just set fire to this movie. But like the reason that has to be the high point of the movie in terms of like the emotional high point is
because they lose.
because they don't go on to win the championship, and obviously that's just like history. But if you're right, this in a perfect world, the Oakland A's would go on to win the World Series. That would be the story, except they didn't.
Yeah.
But like, and it's fine. I think the movie manages to survive that quite well, all things considered.
Mm-hmm.
But it means it has to have Chris Pratt. You have to conclude a lot of arcs in this last game that we see played.
And this is where I'm going to level a bit of criticism in this movie, and there's lots more to talk about, but just skipping to the end a little bit. I think, and I was watching this as usual with my wonderful and very intelligent wife, who was, I think, rightly said, this movie should have ended 25 minutes ago. It was like, oh, there is not a truer statement that will be said this evening, because once you get to the 20 win, I think top it off there, and then smash cut we go to, oh, and the Athletics, oh, they've the fairy tale is over, and that's the end of their attempt this year. And I just think as soon as he gets to the point where he's leaving the Athletics going to the Red Sox, that is a fascinating story. There's a baseball story I do know about. Like, I think you need to that's where you need to end the movie, because it does drag on a little bit too long. And also I think like it's okay to lean into the tropes of sports movies. Like, it's fine. Like, we enjoy them for that. We enjoy the fact that they are going to win and they come back from adversity and they get the 20. I just felt like the movie ends
It's the curse of based on a book, isn't it?
It is.
In that, in a perfect world, if you're writing this movie and if you weren't kind of like tied into the docudrama sort of thing, which this very much is, if this was the Cincinnati fucking AAA baseball team, or I really was struggling to make something up. I was trying to make up a team name, and then I was like, but I might accidentally just say the team name, and then
Isn't there one called the Redskins?
I do know that
are they still called the Redskins?
The Detroit team is the Detroit Tigers, and they drafted Patrick Mahomes, but that's the only reason I know that.
The Redskins is the
football team, isn't it?
Was
the Braves, I think. The Braves is a baseball team, I believe.
The Braves, the Cleveland Guardians, is that what? No, there's one in there.
I think it's the Braves.
Yeah, Cleveland Indians is what they used to be with that, and they had a super racist. You see it in this film where they've got this like stereotypical, like something out of fucking Peter Pan, Walt Disney Peter Pan movie.
Yeah,
they changed their names to the Cleveland Guardians, which is a much better name. Yeah. Anyway, sorry,
it's good.
But see, the thing is, though, I think that you could have. I think you could have leaned on just the sport movie tropes a little bit more, and we wouldn't have had to have this kind of dragging out. But saying that, I think this movie moves pretty well. I think we get a lot of interpersonal stuff, and we get a lot of it's the dynamic between the characters. I think the dialogue in this is where it really, really shines. I love the dialogue. I love some of the lines in this. It's so clear. Like, there's such a, it's quite sparse, and you know exactly what everyone's
conversations people would have.
Yeah, Yeah.
in the confines of you're a baseball scout. Like, actually, I think that the reason they have to have the title cards and the flashbacks is because, and I love this, there's so little exposition. It's great. Like that,
Yeah.
there kind of is sometimes, but mostly you don't have one character sitting down, and with the exception of Jonah Hill's initial speech to Brad Pitt, they don't have another conversation about how Moneyball works. You know,
We don't get a Big Short Adam McKay. Here's what's her face in the bath.
is Margot Robbie in a bathtub to explain baseball to you?
We don't get
Suddenly,
that.
everyone's more interested in baseball than they were. Let me just say that as a fact.
Well, baseball. Now, I think that's I think that is a strength, and you're right. It's really good that we don't get that. I think a lot of that comes from the fact that we have two really, really accomplished screenwriters. We've got Steve Zalian, who did Gangs in New York and Schindler's List and The Irishman. Plus, ever heard of Aaron Sorkin? Yep,
Yeah, didn't he
he
do all of those TV shows that were titled "Isn't America Just Fabulous"?
he
Isn't
did.
America just wonderful? Isn't being an American great?
He did the previous the Broadway play A Few Good Men previous episode, which we did the movie of,
We did not
and
like that movie.
no, he did the screenplay for that as well. But also, yeah, he's done lots of
West Wings. West
movies,
Wings, the
West
big
Wing
Aaron
and
Sorkin.
Social Network and all these other things.
I haven't
So
seen Social Network.
it's probably I
Yeah,
quite enjoyed it
fine.
in 2000 whatever it was, but probably now you just think, wow. You know what,
Nah.
Facebook? Did you have to destroy the American democracy? Did you have to do that? You did. Okay, that's fair enough. But I think the screenplay in this is where the strength is, and it's interesting from a filmmaking point of view to be able to identify so closely where the strength of this movie comes from, because I think it really is. It's the words that the characters say that make the movie. Because cinematography wise, don't see a lot going on here. Like, it's very functional. It's fine. I did really enjoy the score, but again, it's kind of side. But I think it's so um it's so absolutely, like, every single word is exactly what needs to be said in that moment, and all the line deliveries are about
Yes, but
conveying the story.
not in a Joss Whedon way.
No,
Do
yes,
you know
yes.
what I mean? Like, and again, that's the benefit of it, is it's not in an overly punctuated, overly cartoony fashion. I do
Hmm.
agree, Matt, absolutely. I actually think that even more so than that, I think that there's a bit of trivia here that basically this was the second iteration of the movie. The first version, the script was a bit different, and they wanted to basically have baseball players play all of the. They wanted to get the baseball players to come in and play their characters.
Oh God.
Yeah, that died a death. That's when Brad Pitt came on board.
Don't do
That
that.
died a death. But I think it's also the edit of this, because the one thing in this movie that I could have done without, and I don't think it actively like harms the movie in its edited, finished form. But the
Hmm.
one thing I could do without is Brad Pitt's family. I just think that, like, they just literally
Yeah.
just take up. Let me do my bit, and you can disagree with me if you
No, I'm
like.
agreeing with you.
But they
Please.
literally just take screen time. And the daughter things, it's they're nice scenes, and they kind of like they're nice moments, but it's totally irrelevant to the rest of the plot. This isn't like a wonderful. It doesn't need to be like a wonderful arc for the Brad Pitt character at the end of this movie. Like,
Yeah.
you can have the arc be about his business success rather than introducing like a really underwritten ex-wife, this daughter, the ex-husband who exists just to be put in his place by Brad Pitt. But apparently, in the edit, Brad Pitt had a current wife as well, and basically they were like, "Nah, cut her right out of there. Snip, 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 snip." Um, and like, again, I think the edit saved a lot of that, because if this had been more of a Billy Bean kind of like a biopic, I think you kind of rob the movie of any strength that it did have.
Yes, and I think you're exactly right, because I'm already a little bit sick of Billy Bean flashbacks. I'm already a
It's
little
the
bit
Brad Pitt thing,
tired.
isn't it? It's like, you've got Brad Pitt. How do we maximize the fact that he's Brad Pitt?
Yeah, yeah. Whereas I think if you'd maybe if it's not Brad, but then it's not even like we get to see Brad Pitt as he's some actor who's playing him as a young version. I I think you're definitely right about the family though. We could have excised these from the movie, and really, what would you get?
What do you lose?
I just don't think there's actually that much there that is gonna be lost from the structure of the movie,
The
other than that.
only two the only two things you'd really lose, like, is the reason he turns around and he's driving his car away, but you could just have him listening to the radio in his office and deciding to go up to the dugout,
Mhm.
and putting the CD in at the end, which says you're you're a loser, which did make me laugh because I was like, "This is weird." Yeah, you're a loser. You're only being offered a $13 million a year contract as the general
Which he
manager
didn't
of the
take.
Boston Red Sox.
Which he didn't take. I mean, it's
But again, you wouldn't necessarily lose anything because you just put the cap on the movie being basically that title card saying he didn't take the job. And
yeah.
actually, I think that's way, way more powerful than
And also, this is a movie that almost asks you to Google it afterwards. Like, I think this
it
is a movie
insists
that's
upon itself, Lois.
it's just by itself. I think it's a really good piece of film criticism, that little scene from
Damn
Family Guy.
you, Seth MacFarlane.
Um, yeah, I actually really, I think this is a movie of its time in that it's if this was made 20 years earlier, you wouldn't be able to Google it in the same way. You'd have to go to a library and look up, baseball
I think
facts.
20 years earlier, this would have to be a Field of Dreams sports movie.
Yes, exactly,
And then,
totally.
like, 10 years later, it would have to be I don't know what it would be now. I suspect it
Now,
would be a
now
lot
it would
less.
be now it would be a social network fueled nightmare of abuse, and like it would be these players having mental breakdowns because of all the fucking Twitter
No,
hate
I've
they
got it,
get.
Sam. I've got it. It wouldn't even be that. It would just be 40 minutes of this movie would just be little Twitter bubbles and
Oh
iMessage
God.
bubbles in the corner. Oh, oh!
It would be awful. I think there's nothing wrong actually with leaving your audience wanting questions, and like I think even if they left it at the point of the movie where he says he's offered the job, and Jonah Hill says that would make you the highest paid baseball coach of all time, and I think like give us a little look to not a look to the camera, but give us a little look from Brad Pitt where he's like, I don't know, and then just end the film there. Give us. It's okay to end the movie and say, I don't know. We have the resolution. We have what they want to achieve, which is the 20 in the row, uh, as you has Jesus, as you have identified. And so after that point, I'm kind of checked out. I kind of don't really care what happens to Billy Bean. The Athletics have done it. Fantastic. Now, I'm gonna go and Google about baseball and try and learn a
Yeah,
little bit more about
exactly.
this guy's life. But really,
I
just
I
get
really
out of here.
respect a movie, and I think this movie kind of does it and kind of doesn't. I really respect a movie that just finishes, like because ultimately, sometimes that's nice. Sometimes it's good. Nomadland, that just sort of ended, didn't it? As like a
Mhm. Mhm.
I was watching Thief, the James Caan movie. That just sort of ends, just finishes. Like I think that's a lot of directors struggle with that, like to resist writing the epilogue basically, in books where sometimes it ends and then you've got the epilogue telling you about how all the hobbits went home and took
110
Mates
more
or whatever.
pages. Jesus
Exactly. But like
Christ.
I think way too many directors and writers basically can't resist the urge to go in and like do the farewell. And I think that in a movie sometimes, especially this movie, which is what is this movie over 2 hours?
Oh, it is. It's 2 hours and
And I,
8
and I
minutes.
really and I really am not complaining about the length at all because you don't feel it because it's a good, well-paced movie in that there isn't much action. So like you don't have like vast periods where there's nothing happening because the whole movie is vast periods and nothing happening.
It's a lot.
Because it's about baseball. But but by resisting that urge to have the his daughter rushes into his arms and the big speech about how he's found true zen or whatever, like by not having that, I think you kind of just finish your movie and like actually you then let your movie rest on its own laurels as opposed to like having the awkward fucking like farewell scene. Or and not that this movie really does anything to earn any of that, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That
I
like
think I think you can
you're done,
be
get out of there.
you can be more, you can be a little bit more disciplined, can't you, with the end of this movie, and you can give us, the fact that you have text. I always think if a movie has to have a little bit of text on the screen that says whatever, what happens next off, that we didn't get to see, I think that's probably a failure. That's probably a failure in your screenwriting, that you didn't build that in, that you didn't account for that, or that you didn't just be brave and just leave us to it. Like, let us go and Google and see what happens to this guy. Like, that's fine. It's okay for the movie. But again, this is a Brad Pitt, like
Let's
popular
talk
movie.
about let's talk about Brad Pitt, can we?
Yeah, go on.
Just briefly. In that, I actually think I think Brad Pitt has got quite good acting chops. I think it's slightly dulled by the fact that he looks like Brad Pitt. I think it's really hurt his career as a serious actor, and I'm going to justify that. Obviously, it hasn't hurt his bank account,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the fact that even in this movie, and they give him a silly haircut, but like, there's no covering up quite how chiseled this man is.
Yeah.
Like, and especially in a room full of like actual baseball scouts and old baseball players and coaches, like, he's kind of the best looking guy in this movie by a country mile. And I think it's kind of really hurt how seriously we can take him, or how often he gets offered roles where he's asked to like actually act, because ultimately he's just that really, really good looking guy.
Yeah, I know. I think he is. I think especially when you see him early in his career, films like 12 Monkeys, where he's fantastic in that. Seven, he's really, really good. Fight Club, obviously. Like, I mean,
Ooh, there's a movie we should revisit. I bet we don't like it.
I bet we don't. There's a white guy movie. There's there's
speaking of white guys in their
there's
teens.
there's the white guy movie.
Speaking of movies where women don't exist, by the way.
Yeah, Ocean's 11. Love
Yeah.
Brad Pitt in that movie. I love that movie. Like, there's he is, I think, underappreciated, oddly, even though he's obviously very popular, but he's kind of more popular on the celebrity side perhaps than as an actor. But I think in this movie, I think he's doing a really good job. He's quite understated. He's also quite like, and I think maybe this comes from the book or comes from Billy Bean himself. Even that point where he's having that difficult conversation with the older scout, who says like, "You're a fucking you're destroying this team. I'm not really part of it." He's still quite. He's still being a bit of a dick. He's kind of laughing at this guy. He's kind of
He's a
like,
cunt. Yeah, he's a total arsehole.
he's not really
Um,
taking his concerns seriously.
in his own
And
way, in the way that I think that more comes from Billy Bean and maybe like what GMs are like. And we know a bit, obviously, of the drama from our time watching the NFL, but like ultimately, these guys do wield a phenomenal amount of power. We see that
Mhm.
later in the movie where he like basically trades the players away to force the coach's hand and make him do as he's told, basically.
Yeah,
And like, he does. It's they do wield a phenomenal amount of power, and yeah, you have to be an arsehole when you're in that position and you've got all of that power and you want to get things done. And I
mhm,
think that Brad Pitt captures that very well, while also being quite likable because he's Brad Pitt.
yeah,
I also really, really like Jonah Hill in this and in general. I think he is another underrated actor, but probably for very different reasons. Where most people probably look at Jonah Hill and think about like Superbad, where he's drawing dicks, and like all of those Seth Rogen movies he did, where it's stoner humor. I think Jonah Hill is an excellent actor who maybe doesn't get the opportunity to like stretch his like pretty good dramatic wings sometimes.
yeah. I totally agree. I think the good example of that is what's that movie that he's in? Scorsese.
The Wolf of Wall Street is very, very
Yes.
good. He was in a Netflix limited series called Maniac, which is uh, I've recommended it to you before. No one seems to have watched it. I've never. If anyone's listening to this and you've seen Maniac on Netflix with Emma Stone and Jonah Hill, the 6-part limited series, please get like at us on Twitter. I would really love
Imaginary
to.
movie podcast at gmail.com. Get in touch. get into
Please
it.
do, because it really feels like I'm the only person in the world who watched that, which is fine because the world does exist for my own personal edification, and therefore, like my own personal Netflix series starring Emma Stone and Jonah Hill is
It's
fantastic.
it's it's not actually on
Um,
my Netflix. It's served only to you.
but I think that he's really really good, and maybe has been pigeonholed too much as kind of like that fat stoner comedy where he doesn't get cast in stuff where I think that you
I think
know
that was
I think
true, but I think
he's got leading man chops, and he's certainly doing more dramatic roles now. But like I
yeah.
really would like to see more Jonah Hill vehicles, and we don't really see vehicles from anyone who wasn't a wrestler anymore. But like that would be nice.
Hey, listen? How are we going to get our presidents? Yeah, how's America going to get their presidents if it's not wrestler, actor, president? I don't know, Dave.
Billionaires, Sam. It'll be billionaires.
Okay, billionaire, reality TV star, president. It's all unless the entertainment industry is involved, it's not going to happen. So we need a pipeline for them. All right.
I think you can cut another corner there, unless vast amounts of unearned wealth are involved, Sam.
Yes, that is the nexus. Would you, Dave? Would you like to do, as we wrap up this podcast, a short baseball quiz to really expose your lack of knowledge about baseball?
I'm excited because I was reading quite a lot about baseball earlier, so we'll just disabuse any notions I have that I've maybe learned anything.
Okay,
Go
we've
on.
got a little bit of music, as is customary. Enjoy the Spanish fleet. Let's go to our favorite quiz provider, BuzzFeed, and give us 12 baseball questions to prove you know the bare minimum, which is a great headline. How many balls until a batter is walked? 3, 4, 5, or endless balls?
I believe it's 4.
Oh, and you are correct. Well done, Dave. That is good. 4 means that they have 4 chances to hit it, I believe. Is that right?
If they swing for it, and they don't hit it, that's a strike, isn't it? So yeah, I think it's 4 chances to.
So is that if they do nothing, then they get 4 goes at that, and then it's
Yes, but it's also to do with where the ball goes,
right
like relative. If the ball hits the batter, they get to walk to first at any point. If the ball hits the batter,
on the
um,
body?
yeah, on the body. I'm a bit unclear about the rest of the balls. It's
Okay. I mean,
next
this is the blind leading the blind down a blind alley. But anyway, where do the pitchers have to throw the ball for it to be considered a strike? The ball zone, the batter zone, the strike zone, or the danger zone?
I think it must be the strike zone.
You're correct. Well done, Dave.
That answers our previous question, by the way. The strike zone must be a certain height, and then if it's low,
Height
that's a
and
ball.
width.
So that's 4 balls, and what's the foul zone? There's a danger zone.
I'll tell you. So the width of the strike zone is the width of the plate, and the height varies depending on the batter, but usually somewhere between the batter's knee and elbow. That
Right,
seems
I
very
see.
specific.
Well,
That
if that
seems
would that would seem like if it was low or high, you've got an umpire who would say basically he's the one who says if it's a ball or if it's a strike.
yes,
I think if you
yes.
swing for it and miss it, regardless of where the ball is, I think that's still a strike.
Okay,
I think, but I could be wrong. Next question.
you're absolutely almost certainly are wrong. How many players do you need in the outfield? 3, 4, 5, or everyone? Everyone needs to be in the outfield.
Right, I can figure this out. Right, so there are 9 players on a baseball team.
Here
Right,
we go. Carry
you've
the
got a
2.
pitcher, first baseman, second baseman, third baseman, and you have a catcher, which means you've got 4 players in the outfield.
Incorrect. It's actually
Ah,
3.
where's the other guy? Where's the other
You have a
guy?
you have your left fielder, center fielder, and right fielder. We're just talking about the outfield, Dave. We're not talking about the people within the diamond. I don't know. I'm
Who's
guessing.
the other guy in the diamond?
So I think they're infield, and outfield is just the
So
fielders,
there's
like you
one
would
guy
have.
in the infield and 3 guys in the outfield.
I don't know. You're asking the wrong person. I'm
Fucking
just
hell, I
reading.
feel
I'm
like I'm
just reading
promoted
what it
there.
says on this website. More questions? You happy to go on?
Yeah, keep going, keep going.
Where
You can
must
always
the
cut all of this
relief?
out.
Yeah. Oh no, it's staying in. This is This is good filler. Where must the relief pitchers warm up? The dugout, the bullpen, the batter's box, or the concession stand?
How many of those did you just make up?
I'm just reading what it says on the website, Dave. The
I
dugout, the
think it's
bullpen, the
the
batter's box.
bullpen, which I'm not actually, now I've said it, don't think is a thing in baseball. I don't think that, I think that's a word you've made up.
The bullpen.
The
Is that your
bullpen or the bullpen?
is that your final answer?
What's the what is it, ball, BALL, or bull,
Bull,
BULL?
bull, BULL, pen.
I think it's the dugout. I think it's the dugout.
The dugout.
Yeah, I'm sticking on dugout.
Incorrect. It's the bullpen.
God damn it! I was sure that was made up.
A reliever
balls on a
usually
baseball
warms up
field.
to prepare themselves before being called into a game. So the bullpen seems to be like a sunken down version, a sunken down area that is behind
An area that's been dug out, perhaps.
No, because the dugout is where they sit. The dugout is where they sit.
I do know because in Cheers, Sam Malone, Ted Danson,
go on,
is a retired relief pitcher, and it not bothered me, but for years I never really knew what that meant.
Yeah,
and it is because there is a limit. Obviously, pitchers get tired, but a pitcher can only throw 110 balls in a game of baseball. They're only allowed, and after that, you've got to send in like a replacement.
like an over.
Not all games.
A lot more. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like a lot of games will run to that, but usually they'll bring in a relief pitcher to do like some of the last innings, basically.
Okay, that makes sense. So
I always thought it was odd that it was a position.
We're moving on.
You're not good enough to be. You're not good enough to be a starting pitcher.
Nobody cares. What is anything hit outside the field of play called? A foul?
A foul ball.
Oh, going in before the options. Are you sure about that?
I'm certain.
Correct. Well done.
Ding, 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 ding.
A ball in play is called a fair ball. We'll go two more questions and then we'll wrap up this torturous bit. How many players are needed in a baseball lineup? 11, 10, 9, or 40?
It is 9.
Correct. Pitcher catcher.
You really made me think I was wrong there.
No, I love that little delay. Pitcher catcher, 4 infielders and 3 outfielders. Do the maths. That's 9. Last question, and I haven't been keeping tally, so I have no idea how you've done. How many bases, including home plate, are there? How many bases, including home plate, are there?
4.
Oh, we'll be sure this is your last question, which means like a like a
like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? If I get this one wrong, I lose everything.
It's exactly. It's like a high school football game. Next goal wins, and this is all. It all comes down to this: how many bases, including the home plate, are there? So,
I'm going to do the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire deal or no deal thing. I'm going to tell you a bit about my life, a bit of a sob story. No. By the way, you saying about there being a pitcher and a catcher and 4 infielders means there must be 4 basemen, and that means that. But I'm sure there's only 1, 2, 3 in home. I'm sure that's how it works, unless home is in the same. I still think it's 4. But obviously 5 might be right also. I still think it's 4.
You still think it's 4? Is that your final answer? I'm just going to drag this out.
Yeah, that's my final answer.
Are you sure? Are you 100% sure?
Sam, this is not good podcasting. 4.
Correct. You've done it. Well done, David. You have won the prize, which is today a patented "fuck you" from Sam. Well done. Congratulations.
Fantastic. I think I did all right there. I think I only got 2 wrong.
It's I think maybe 2 or 3. Anyway, we don't know. I wasn't keeping track, but I don't want to add to your inflated ego any further by confirming that you actually did well. I am actually quite, Dave, impressed by your baseball knowledge, which I assume was developed over the 10 minutes before this podcast.
No, I read an article on, I can't remember when I watched this Monday, and I was like, basically because of the same bottom of the 9th, which is, when it's like, it's a term I've heard, but I have absolutely zero idea what it means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Near the end zone.
So I thought, I'll tell you what, I will read some of the rules so I understand about, because I played softball over here, which is sort of like baseball. And I was like, right, so I understand that. But apparently I didn't understand. There's a lot of people crowded around the batter, and apparently I didn't understand. There's a lot more of them than I thought.
So what's your well, I'm going to let you think about your final kind of a summary of this movie while I tell you mine, because I think this is one of those movies that, again, I love diving into a world that I'm completely unaware of before. I love that sense in a movie where you just think, I know nothing about baseball. Like it's not something that interests me, but because of the well constructed nature of the movie, I'm able to enjoy it. I'm able to enjoy not just the soap opera-ness, not just the drama between the characters, but also like you give me enough information, you give me enough to be able to dive into what actually is going on, and the 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 kind of fascinating uh, statistics and all that. And I think it definitely earns its place as a Sam economics movie, which I think is becoming a genre in itself.
Yes. Similarly, I really liked this. I think I summed it up in messages saying this is a good movie. It's not a great movie for a lot of the reasons that we've outlined. But I think it's good. It's solid. It doesn't feel its length too much. It's interesting without being overly interested in baseball, which is one of its key strengths. But ultimately, it's kind of like it's an underdog movie in a lot of ways, because these guys are trying to book big baseball basically, and try and Chris Pratt's character, who we haven't really mentioned, and I don't think we needed to, certainly, and the other main baseball guy. They are underdogs, and they've been like picked up. The guy with the funny throw I was looking at on Google, I googled him on Wikipedia and stuff, because most of these guys are based on real players, and like the weird throw thing, kind of
Mm,
like it's a real underdog movie in that way, where you kind of like your high school sports movie is like, right, let's get all these underdogs, and the American Dad does a great one where they get the magician to join the football
yeah.
team. But like that is the thing, like, oh, let's get let's get this mathematician to join the football team, but it'll be shocking on the field, but it'll be great at the we'll bring out his internal strengths, and we'll get the fat kid to come, and he'll turn out to be really good because he's got bulk. And do you know what I mean? And this movie
Because
kind of
he's got
has,
bulk.
you know what I mean, though, in football. But like, you know what I mean? It's like this team of like scrappy
Misfits.
underdogs,
Yeah.
misfits, and like this movie has a real um theme of that runs through it. I really like all of the kind of like the boardroom scenes with the coaches and things. I love the trade deadline bit. I think is really interesting, and the way that it's literally just Brad Pitt picking up a phone and talking to nobody, and then telling Jonah Hill to do something. And I think that's like a wonderfully understated scene. And this movie is kind of built of scenes like that. The highs aren't that high, but the lows aren't that low. If that makes sense, it's kind of
Hmm.
like a real
Hmm.
middling movie. Um, I can't say I'll ever watch it again. I'm glad I did watch it. If I hadn't watched this podcast, you would never in a million years have convinced me to watch it. Therefore, if you're listening to this, like, it's worth your time, but whatever. You do you,
Yeah.
Who am I, your mother? Tell you what to do?
Don't break your back to watch it. Well, no, actually, I thought this was really good. It's very well considered, in the reviews, and I think it is. I think it's a really well made movie, and and you know what? It made me care about baseball, which is not something that I've ever experienced before. So you kind of have to give it that. You have to give it that, don't you? Really?
The general consensus on baseball from everyone who I've ever spoken to is that it's deeply boring. I know some Americans as well, and that it's deeply boring. um,
It's not
and
like the NFL, which is like people just put it on and they watch it for the adverts of the Super Bowl. I think it's still quite a nerdy sport, even for
Yeah,
Americans who are
exactly.
into this.
And there is something to be said for that. Like, something I really, really enjoy about the NFL is kind of how, I know you enjoy less, but something Joe and I really enjoy is kind of like how you can dive into all the statistics and all the backups, and like learning all the players, and fucking looking at the draft and stuff like that, and being a bit of an armchair scout, which is fun, even though you're a moron. And baseball seems to be like very much even more involved than that. And I guess if you're in, you're in.
Yeah, and that's sports,
Fuck
baby.
off, casuals.
You got
Sincerely,
to this
baseball.
exactly. You got to enjoy it, and there's something yeah, exclusionary about that, but that's also part of the fun, isn't it?
Yeah. I have a pick for next week. if you're ready for this this
I'm
bombshell.
bracing myself, and also this is almost likely to be put out in the wrong order. So go on.
Almost certainly.
All movie we
But
watched last week was
the Atlanta Falcons. So sorry, I've killed Sam.
stupid joke. Love it.
Have you done Frame today, Sam?
I haven't done Frame today. Should we do Framed live on air?
You should, because I'm going to spoil it by telling you we're going to watch that movie.
Okay, hold on. Second one. Oh my goodness, what is this second one? This is it's like a Renaissance cathedral with people in white pointing. It's oh my god! It's what's his face from Spider-Man, Doc Ock from Spider-Man. I don't know. Number 4. Oh, I know what it is. Shush, quiet. Da Vinci Code. Got it in 4. There we go.
I got it in 4 as well, actually, and I was kicking myself because I should have got it in 1 because I've seen so many parodies of it. I've never seen Da Vinci Code. It's on Now TV.
Oh, you're in for a
I've never seen it. I bet it's shockingly bad, but we've been making fun of it for like 15 years, like
Let's
as a
do it.
society. And I think it's good. I think it's going to be a proper hate. Honestly, Sam, I remember watching a Family Guy rip off a joke about the Da Vinci Code, and there was like, you know, all of those spates of things, and I bet it's going to be like the most brilliant Catholic detective movie where none of the clues make sense thing that we've ever seen. The American Dad episode with the Peanuts, President
Yeah,
Peanut, that is a
100%.
rip-off of. Sorry, if you just seen we've had a comment asking us if we want to help, if we want help finding love.
Have we?
Sorry, you'll see on the right-hand side of StreamYard.
69. Well, no, I'm not going to give the website out, but this website, Want to Find Love, our AI will help.
Wow, we do keep talking about the sex robots that are coming,
and to be honest,
and so will you be.
Yeah, I also think Dave maybe take the AI's help. Just saying. Sorry.
Wow, you can do me like that live on the podcast. Anyway, my disappointing love life aside, next week, or perhaps a different week entirely, we will come back and watch the Da Vinci Code.
Fantastic.
Which I'm just going to say, I think this is going to be the worst Tom Hanks film I've ever seen. I just think that's my prediction, is that I'm going to say this is the worst Tom Hanks performance ever.
It's going to be the worst hair you've seen in Tom Hanks too, so that's a pretty good. I think that's a pretty good measure.
Fantastic! I love the hair segment of the podcast. We don't do it every week because we don't do a Nick Cage film every week.
Look at it,
but when we do,
disgusting.
Right, Sam, let's get the fuck out of here because I need help finding love.
It's okay. The AI's got you. Ending
Where does that come from?